it's not the last time you've seen it.
I got to see a great performance. It was by Chesney Hawkes. It was a half-time. Performed the one and only. A bit like England's performance, started a little bit slowly, but then it sort of peaked in the second half. In saying that, I'm not sure if everyone will remember it in years to come.
An MBE settles the Battle of Britain. USA thank the heavens for their Christian, and even without their main man, Senegal battled through to set up a clash with England. We're joined by Daniel McDonnell from Qatar, and anyone listening yesterday would have heard Dan justify his decision to take in Qatar's game against the Netherlands. How did that work out for you, Dan?
Well, I think the moral of the story today, for me, is know the buffet that's one too many. I know ultimately it's Tony Cascarino's fault, right? I mean, we had it last week. I mean, there's I'm always conscious to this. I mean, like I'm not in this sort of sense of, everything is wonderful over here. I just think there's almost an absurdity to it that, let's give the media like a wonderful buffet service in the main media centre and lay on buses and everything, and all the coverage will be wonderful. Everything will be great here. But I must admit, like the buffet is pretty good, as Cascarino quite rightly pointed me towards. So it's a sort of a rational thing to do. You're going to Netherlands against Qatar. Come back to my sort of to my loud roots. Get your dinner in the middle of the day. So I got into the media centre. I was enjoying my buffet, pretty relaxed, because one of the mad things as the tournament goes on, you just realise that it's pretty easy to get the games generally, and I was so relaxed. After finishing my dinner, I strolled down to get the bus around 4:10 here, 6 o'clock kickoff, to be told that the last bus to Al Bayt Stadium, which is the most remote stadium, was maybe a little bit too casual, was gone. I mean, there was a double agony to the whole thing, because I just arrived there feeling like a really good Samaritan, because on my way to the bus, I bumped into another Irish journalist. I'm not going to name who they are, but reasonably well known Irish journalist, maybe podcaster, and they were walking past me in the opposite direction. They said they were going to Education City for the Ecuador-Senegal match. That didn't sound right to me, because I was like, they were like, there's no buses there, so I'll have to go and get the metro, because Education City, it's only 2 stops away in the metro from the media centre. It's like, clearly there's no bus there because it's that close, or there's no, it's too close to even put on the media bus. I was just thinking, that doesn't sound right. I said, I know Tunisia, France is in Education City. There's no way there's 2 games in a row in Education City at the same time. Sure enough, this person checked their phone. It turned out that actually the game, they were about to go on a futile trip to Education City for a game that wasn't there. Ecuador Senegal was in another stadium, Khalifa. So, I mean, I felt brilliant. Not really, can't always be that generous person, but I was like, I felt brilliant. Like, no, come to me. Let's go and get the buses. The Khalifa Stadium bus was there. I pointed him off on his merry way as he got onto the bus, and then realised that there was no bus there for me, because Al Bayt is that far away that the bus leaves earlier. So that was it. I mean, I don't know what to do. There was a quite irate. There was someone else in the same boat, which always helps, because you don't feel like that much of an idiot. And this individual, I don't know where he was from. He was a little bit of Latin fire in him, but I couldn't really figure out quite what his language was. I did suggest sharing a taxi. Clearly, he's not on a great expense deal, because he scoffed off and didn't really fancy that at all. And the last I saw of him was going back in, having a row with security, saying he had a pacemaker, so he couldn't go through the scanning machine. And that's the end of our World Cup, our shared journey. But basically for me, that was it. I couldn't go to Netherlands, Qatar. I spent 24 hours justifying the reason for going there, and I couldn't go. So it was back to square one.
Fair, we've been talking about that now for about 3.5 minutes, which is probably more than we would have got out of Qatar and Netherlands. So in some ways, it's served its purpose.
Well, yeah. Apart from the fact that, I mean, it does seem like they started to let people free into the stadium as the game went on to make it full up. That does seem.
Well, there was some stories as well. Yeah, there were some stories as well of people who'd been promised to get in, and then by the time they'd let people in free, there was no room for the people that they'd promised to get in. So seemed to be a bit of a mess. Look, I guess that's the story that you could have had, but like the old bullseye thing, here's the story you could have had. But I guess the one you did go to in the end, England and Wales, wasn't probably the game of the day, if you like. There was a decent performance from England in the end to get through, but I guess the end of an era for Wales as well.
Yeah, no, that's it. I went up. I plopped myself down onto the waiting list for England Wales, and I was approved. It was great, and it did. I got to see a great performance. It was by Chesney Hawkes. It was a half time. He performed the one and only. A bit like England's performance, started a little bit slowly, but then it sort of peaked in the second half. And in saying that, I'm not sure if everyone will remember it in years to come, which I think is possibly what the English performance was a little bit like too. Um, they got the job done, but you build a game up in your head. It's like, yeah, I'll go to this game. I mean, I basically went to it because it's the easiest one logistically at that stage, and,
Mm-hmm.
and I reckon I couldn't miss the bus to this one. Um, it was it was pretty underwhelming. Like, you have it in your head, this is a derby. There's going to be some kind of spice. There's going to be some kind of spark, and yeah, there's a bit of booing of anthems and a little bit of that, but not really. It just felt more like an FA Cup tie featuring a team. It didn't really believe that they could do it,
Yeah.
but sort of happy to be a part of it without ever believing they could be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, Wales didn't even lay a glove, and Gareth Bale gone off at half time, and I think Robert Page spoke afterwards about his future.
He wants to play, and he's got that hunger and desire, and you see why when he gets the ovation, like I said, that he got from our supporters, and he loves playing for his country. It doesn't mean that we're still not going to develop these younger players through, so we'll have to get the balance right, but it's not the last time you've seen it.
Well, I think there's no doubt that a big theme of the game is just age, like the age of the Welsh players. I mean, my piece I ended up writing was effectively centered around it. Like, it does feel like the end of an era for them, as much as they maybe believe it might not be the end of some international careers. But you look at it, Bale can't play the second half. Ramsey's tired, gets booked for a late tackle on Henderson. Joe Allen can't continue. Even Ben Davies went off injured, and you're just looking at what's there behind, and you're thinking, no, this isn't. I mean, they naturally, you sort of look at Ireland and you see, well, where might Ireland stand relative to Wales, but like, depth is an issue. Like, they've got two League One midfielders and a League Two midfielder in their squad. They do have like Premier League players, but if Fulham and Bournemouth were relegated, they'd be decimated, in that
Yeah.
regard. And like, okay, younger players like Nico Williams is 21, Harry Wilson is 25, one or two others are in that sort of bracket, but they're you like they're under 21 crop. The most recent crop that's just graduated, there was 4 League of Ireland players in that, and that's, I mean, they're good,
Mm-hmm.
talented players, but like, it's, you would say that, that at one point I think there was more players in the Welsh under 21 squad from the League of Ireland than the actual Ireland one, because a lot of them have got moves because their careers maybe is progressing faster. So yeah, I mean, like, there's a certain sadness in it. I mean, they've had a great run at it. I mean, this is the thing. Like, they've had an amazing decade for a team that was 117th in the world in 2011.
Yeah.
And Stephen Kenny was at this game. Keith Andrews was with them. Wales sort of wrote off a campaign or two to eventually peak over time. And you could say you could take some kind of heart from that. But then again, they also had a Gareth Bale, which
They
Ireland
had a
certainly don't
5-time
have.
Champions League winner coming through.
Yeah.
That's and Aaron Ramsey again.
Yeah.
Aaron Ramsey, who looks like a player very much now. I'm not sure. I think he's still only maybe 31, 32.
31,
he looks
yeah.
very much 31. Yeah. He's very much like one of those players, a bit like a Cesc Fabregas or a Wayne Rooney, who had a lot of miles on the clock by the time he was 23, 24, and just looks like, he looks like someone who's pressing the accelerator and there's nothing there. There's nothing else left. And it was kind of sad to see him kind of get around the pitch there tonight, because, like, there were times over the course of his career that he would not easily, but he would certainly have lived with a midfield of, Declan Rice, Jude Bellingham, and Jordan Henderson, and he couldn't get close to him. The tackle on Henderson was poor. It was one of those ones you'd say he got there as fast as he could, but that's just not very fast anymore. And that was kind of indicative of the way Wales were. England kind of, again, it's hard to know. You can't know what to expect from England, really. You can't judge anything on that, but they did what they had to do, just kept them at arm's length, kept them with, no great scares, and that was all they had to do against them.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we speak about Brazil, uninspiring, but they do enough to win. I'm not saying England or Brazil, right? I'm not saying that, but in saying that, like there's a slight parallel in that they sort of killed this game in this burst of activity. But Wales were so poor. Like Wales were probably the worst European team in the competition. You would say. I know
Yep.
Serbia haven't been have underperformed, but you could definitely say Wales have been pretty average. I mean, Iran sort of ran all over them. They were second best against the USA and abject defeat to England. So they, yeah, but I mean, I'm not even sure if it's the case that they underperformed or is it just the form, the level they're at the moment, albeit with a
Yeah.
couple of players struggling. Like they beat Ukraine in the summer, but Ukraine were, you know, had to like the draw, like it was very weighted in Wales' favour. Like they had a couple of extra days to play, while Ukraine were coming off the back of a draining game with Scotland. So
Yeah, among
um,
everything else.
yeah, among everything else. So yeah, it's actually like I don't know, thinking about Stephen Kenny and Keith Andrews is like, yeah, Wales are on the decline, but it's like uh I mean, this is complete like nerd territory stuff to be looking this far down the line in permutations before Euros group has even started. But like Ireland's route to a Euro 2024 playoff, um, if they're not going to finish ahead of France and the Netherlands, is for they want all the top two seeds pretty much in the Euros groups to all qualify and not to have too many shocks. And like Wales are already a problem. Like Wales are in a group
Hmm.
for Croatia and Turkey, and you're thinking I think Ireland can afford 2 or 3 shocks in the groups or apparent shocks relative to seedings, and Wales would be one I'd be pretty worried about now. So
Yeah.
maybe could do with them finding a little bit of life to finish ahead of Turkey anywhere, get to the Euros, and we can totally write them off then.
And what was the vibe around? I mean, you're in the press room there. What was the vibe around England? I mean, I was just looking up some stats of previous winners. I'm not necessarily suggesting England are going to win the World Cup. 2018, France went through with 7 points. They had narrow wins against Australia and Peru. Germany 2014, 7 points. Spain 2010, 6 points. Italy 2006, 7 points. Even some of them then had to beat, like Italy in 2006 beat Australia in the last 16. Germany beat Algeria, and France beat Argentina, and that was an Argentina team who only took I think they got through with one win from a group with Croatia, Nigeria, and Iceland.
Mm.
So, like, is the vibe kind of among the English pack over there that, look, we did what we had to do? There was no kind of Algeria disasters or group disasters. Are they kind of reasonably content, or what's the feeling like?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a much more serene environment than sort of previous English camps. So I think there's more understanding when they do have a struggle like the USA game. And I don't know. I mean, I can't even generalize. I think there's been more fractious build up possibly for England than the last time. And there's been a sense that there's some criticism lingering there. You can see even very high profile pundits sort of questioning, Foden's absence, for example. So
Mhm.
amongst other things. So I don't even know what the vibe is. I feel like you speak to a lot of the sort of people on the English beat, and everyone knew coming here or sensed coming here they were going to make the quarterfinals. That's always been the
Yeah.
belief that they're going to make the quarterfinals. I mean, does that risk a disaster against Senegal thinking that way? That I mean, I wouldn't want. I think you have to if they take the eye off the ball there, like you can easily see how Senegal could bring them to extra
Yeah.
time. We'll talk about that game later in the week. But then okay, let's say they get through that. Is there people who go around the place buzzing, thinking England they're going to do a number on France? I wouldn't pick up that vibe.
No.
I think it's quarterfinals seems to be the expectation, and if they manage to get beyond that, it'll become a great tournament for them.
Yeah, absolutely. USA went through with them. Obviously, you were at the game. You wouldn't have seen an awful lot of it. They had, like, again, with the joy of two channels here. You could, like, USA is very, very strange when where they've played 3 games. They've been quite good for long periods of all of them, and yet they were a goal away against Iran from going out. They had one that they kind of half cleared off the line. It was a penalty appeal, and Iran were kind of boisterous in their appeals. I think might be a kind way of putting it. They'll play Netherlands on Saturday. You could see them giving them a few problems given the high energy that they have, but they look like a team who are able to play against good teams almost better than they are against weaker teams. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally see that point. I think they're a dangerous opponent for Netherlands. I think I might try and take in that game if I can locate it, because I mean, I suppose we're reviewing two games at once here. Like, I see Louis van Gaal sort of responding to some criticism of performances. They did beat Qatar only 2-0, and again, people are trying to figure out like how good have their performances really been. Although a Dutch theme over the last year is that they get a lot of wins, got a lot of good results, but never necessarily massively impress people. But they have the wins on the board. But I agree with you about the States. They are they have the capability to be very tricky. They had a few issues down the left side of their defence in the early minutes against England, and just following some people tonight who are at the Iran-USA game. I think it's Robinson from Fulham on the left side. They were suggesting he had a couple of tricky moments again, and maybe that might be an area that could be targeted. But sort of further up the park, they've got good players who, again, like against England as the sort of underdog, they knew how to sort of manage that game. So I give them a chance. The Iran one, it would have been a good occasion to be at. It does seem like the dissent wasn't as audible in the stadium. And there's a lot of theories around that. A lot of theories around maybe extra Iran fans coming in. Can only speculate around that, but I'm seeing footage now of some fans jeering a bit more sort of dissent on the streets in Iran or out apartment windows after this result.
Yes. Yeah.
So I feel like it's been Iran have had a hell of a tournament. Like they have been one of the stories of the tournament. Even if they go home, there's like a whole other class of stories coming out of this Iran run, which aren't just sports section stories.
No, and I think unfortunately football and the nature of what it is being the interest in it, like Iran are now out, so whatever the focus has gone off them in terms of anthems and protests and all that sort of stuff. But their story isn't going to go away. So it's probably important that, people keep an eye on what's going on, what happens to those players. Like that story is, the players aren't going to go home and everything's just going to be okay. It's the story is going to run whether people are watching it or not.
No, that's it. I mean, and that applies to everything. I mean, like, the migrant workers in Qatar are going to come back to work in January too. Some of the ones that have been shipped away for the month, and obviously it is the world spotlight is on it at the moment, and that sort of needs to continue to a degree. And but you're so right. I can only echo what you say about the Iran players, that it is, as we've mentioned previously, one of their former teammates arrested. What's going to happen? Like there's obviously. I mean, this is. I was at the Ireland, the Scotland Ireland game. When was that? That was September 22nd, 23rd. I was in Glasgow the day of the game, and staying pretty central. And there was massive racket noise. Didn't know what it was, and it was a protest of Iranians in Scotland because this is when things had totally sparked off after the death of Mahsa Amini, and there was there was hundreds out marching through the streets, and you have a lot of like Scottish and Irish fans there in match day mode. What's this all about? And 2-3 months later, you're it's still obviously there, and it feels like what's happening there at the moment is something that's going to last. But I mean, again, what do? We move on to the rest of the games, but like that's World Cup is a social, like it's why it's the biggest thing that's going on in the world at the moment in terms of attention, whether it should be or not. It is because of all the strands that it sort of knits together.
Yeah, and as you said, we'll look at Senegal versus England later in the week. But Senegal yesterday, I mean, I think both of us fancied Ecuador to go through. Senegal produced a really strong performance, and there was a lot of emotion involved with Koulibaly talking about Papa Bouba Diop and dedicating the win to the late Fulham midfielder, as well as Sadio Mane, who's not there. So they seem to be there's a lot more going into it than just the football into that game yesterday and ahead of the game against England as well.
Yeah, no, there is. I mean that I don't know. You can just pull out these words and these phrases about their resilience and stuff like that. And maybe there's not much insight behind it sometimes, but really impressive how they responded to the concession. Like, I know it's that
Very
classical
much
line.
so.
You're always at your most vulnerable when you sort of when you concede, but they bounce back, straight away. And again, like we saw it against the Netherlands, how they can they know, like, a lot of the again, but a lot of the African sides are sort of to have a degree of, they know how, like, people have watched AFCON, right, and they know how they can be a real battle of endurance, like they can
Yeah.
actually be very defensive, low scoring tournaments. That's like not just a sort of a throwaway statement. It's like, it's very often the case. And Ecuador is probably a team that people probably thought that, a young team, some sort of something exciting about them. Like, we saw them on the opening day, albeit against Qatar, looking good. But I think Senegal probably, from what I saw, and you can maybe disagree with me, but I thought they deserved it.
No, absolutely they did. So that's, as we talked about, that sets up two of the 8 last 16 games. There'll be 2 more decided today. So we'll move into our much anticipated predictions. Then we start off. We've Group D: Australia, Denmark, Tunisia, France. Obviously, it seems to be a lot riding. There is a lot riding on Australia and Denmark. I think Tunisia still have a chance, if I'm not mistaken, but it seems probably a draw. I think Tunisia are similar positions to what Wales were today, where Tunisia need to beat France and hope that Australia and Denmark draw.
Yeah, exactly. That's where they're at in the equation. And I mean, France are through and not really vulnerable for top spot because of their goal difference situation. So again, like, the France are out again at the weekend, so they're not going to take any unnecessary risks, you wouldn't have thought. So that opens up the possibility that Tunisia could get a result. I know you'll have this line about, well, the players coming in will be hungry to make an impression, and Marcus Thuram come on in the second half in the last France game, very impressive. And they have other bodies. I mean, they were able to do that sort of Kanate, Raphael Varane swap as well. So, I mean, they'll have good players coming in, whatever they do. Prediction wise, I might do the games in both groups at once because they're almost interlinked. So I'm going to go for 1-1 in Tunisia, France. And I think Denmark are better than Australia. I think Denmark weren't bad at all against France. I think Denmark would have to underperform to not beat Australia. And I'll take them to do it 3-1.
Yeah, I'm gonna take 3-0 Denmark, and it's a tricky one. There's obviously a bit of history, to put it mildly, with France and Tunisia. So, I mean, in any circumstance, I think Tunisia would be motivated to try and beat France to go through in a world, potentially go through from a World Cup would be even a greater carrot for them. I just think even the second string France might have a little bit too much quality, so I'm going to take France to win that one 2-1. And in the other group, we've got Poland, Argentina, Saudi, and Mexico. I'm going to take 2 draws in this one. I can just see there being a bit of it.
Does that put Argentina
yes,
through?
It would do. Yeah, it would do. It would put Argentina through in second place. I've been very impressed with Saudi in the 2 games they've played. Obviously, the Argentina one that they won, but they were very, very good against Poland, and Mexico weren't so much. I think it's probably. I fancy a draw in Poland and Argentina, and it's probably clouding me a little bit that the idea that Argentina wouldn't go through if Saudi Arabia wins. So that's probably what's clouding my judgment on this. But
you're
the
couching your
romantic
prediction
in me
there. Yeah, you're couching your prediction. You don't want to predict Argentina going out. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, so I'm going to go for 2 draws.
I think maybe in some of the discussions, people sort of think Argentina are fine now because they won that game, but they still have to play Poland. Like, it is huge.
Absolutely.
Like, I was walking through the media center today, and there was like a Polish crew like doing a very animated like TV slot, and you just sort of like you sort of remind yourself like what a huge game it is for them. You know how exciting it is for them. Like they're going into a game with Argentina, needing a draw to go through, potentially knocking them out in that scenario. But I don't know.
Presuming, sorry,
go on.
I was going to say, presuming you make the bus, that's the game you're going to be at.
Yeah, I am at Poland, Argentina. I mean, it's a 10 o'clock kickoff locally, so I'll be getting the bus around 1:15. But if I miss Argentina in a World Cup, like this is the thing. Like, it's a possibility if you miss the Argentina game, you may not see Argentina in this World Cup at all. Like that is obviously a scenario that can happen. But I don't know. I thought Poland against Saudi weren't that good. They've turned it on. They haven't conceded a goal yet. They're one of the few teams that haven't conceded a goal. And that's fine, but they rode the luck of it against the Saudis, and I just think Argentina will do it. I think they'll do it, but I don't think they'll do it narrowly, like 1-0, and it might be tense and it might be tight, but I think they'll do it. The other game, it could be one where they potentially kill each other off with a draw. I'm trying to think what the goal difference situation would be between the Saudi and Poland.
Well, Saudi would stay -1. Saudi would stay 3 goals behind Poland. So in that instance, it would be Argentina to top the group with Poland in second.
So Saudi, if they were to draw, they need Argentina to hammer Poland.
Yeah,
that's the scenario. Okay, yeah. Now, I'm not going to use that to change my prediction. I'm going to still say that they'll draw Saudi Arabia and Mexico to finish in a draw, and I'd say Mexico will be changing their manager after the tournament.
Very much so. Saudi might be too. Dan, thanks very much for that. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy Messi and hope you make it all right. Thanks for listening to Indo World Cup. Watch us on YouTube or independent.ie or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks.